unique things about the position Ripple is in is the fact that we can invest in the XRP ecosystem. And frankly, we will invest in the whole ecosystem, the blockchain ecosystem. I agree with some of the things said on one of the panels yesterday that said that we are in the earliest stages of a transformative change in how transactions are managed. I want to see the whole category grow.
Right.
I don't view a lot of these companies as competitors because it's so early that I feel like, look, we're trying to solve a payments problem, and there's people working on securities and identity and lending, and I love it. I want all boats to rise, and I think that's a good thing. But for us, we're going to invest in the XRP ecosystem. We're going to invest in the broader ecosystem. We certainly want to see XRP become even more liquid, and I think as we drive adoption, that will happen. You know, this isn't one of the questions, but I want to proactively comment on something. One of the things I say inside the company is I'm not focused on the price of XRP over 3 days or 3 weeks or 3 months. I'm focused on the price of XRP over 3 years and 5 years. I have no qualms saying definitively, if we continue to drive the success we're driving, we're going to drive a massive amount of demand for XRP because we're solving a multi-trillion-dollar problem. These payment flows are obviously very, very large. And to the extent we continue to drive success of signing up more banks, introducing them to how we can solve not just a connectivity question with X-Current, but a liquidity problem, a multi-trillion-dollar problem around liquidity called XRapid, I'm very confident about that longer arc of time.
Not just about the financial spillovers, although those are incredibly important, and they're one of the reasons why the equilibrium interest rate is so low. And Dr. Belega in another speech pointed out that why the left-hand tail risk is higher. But it's the fact that a disproportionate amount of real transactions, purchases of goods and services, are priced in US dollars, even when the two countries have nothing to do with the US. They don't touch the US. And as more and more activity moves online, the question is, what is the currency of choice online? And could the currency of choice online be better balanced between a basket of central bank digital currencies, which is not a new currency, but is a back-to-back of those? And that's the question on the table.
Advances in the payment system we have seen in the last few decades has very much been on the user-facing part. It's the front end. It's the fact that now you can use your phone. It's now that it's much quicker with the fast payment system. But the back end, especially on the cross-border settlement, has really barely changed over the last few decades. I think this is where, especially in the central bank community, because ultimately the payment is done through central bank money. And settled in central bank money, that this is where the central banks will have to come in a big way. I think the technology definitely adds a new element to the discussion, especially the ability to transfer tokens peer-to-peer rather than having to go through the balance sheet chain. But even here, I think we have to be perhaps from now on, from the very beginning, to start to think about what would be the institutional backing that would actually make such a system work. Unless it's an open, permissionless system like Bitcoin, which is where anyone can join and trade these tokens, typically the cases that we've examined, the cases that Usman mentioned as having undergone experimentation by central banks, have been permission systems, where it's really just like central bank money, but it's in digital form, and it's traded peer-to-peer. So if we were to think about a global analog of that, we have to ask questions like, who would be a member of that kind of network? Who's going to decide whether a particular bank or payments firm is going to be a member? And who's going to vet, who's going to ensure the KYC requirements that Tobias mentioned? So I think in terms of the policy work, we should be working in parallel tracks where we explore ways to improve the current system, and there's plenty of scope to do that.
Crypto finance, Ripple, you and Ripple have both been in the space for a very long time, and you've sort of, been there to see the narrative change from Bitcoin to blockchain to tokens. What does the future of crypto look like to you?
Well, to us, what we think is, blockchain doesn't quite capture what's really going on here. We think what's happening is really the creation of what we would call an internet of value. And so we think that has just a profound impact on how the world is going to work. Maybe at its kind of highest level, we almost see it as the completion of globalization, which is obviously not working for everybody right now. It's getting a lot of blowback, and I think it's not because globalization is bad. It's because it's incomplete. There's some key thing missing, and that missing thing is interoperability of money. You have it with data, you have it with goods through shipping containers and modern ports, but you don't have it with money. Money is still stuck in the 70s. And we think at the end of the day, where there's a combination of blockchains, digital assets, and interoperability technologies, which are going to equal this internet of value and fundamentally make the world a much more efficient place.
You guys are facing increasing competition, it seems like. It's not just Ripple now that's working with a bunch of the big banks to help overhaul some antiquated payment systems. Now we've got IBM and Stellar. I think Ant Financial is working on a similar thing. How do you view your incoming competition?
It's good. I mean, it's kind of gratifying to see that, we've been doing this now, focusing on cross-border payments for enterprise for 4 years plus. So it's good to see people finally realizing, yes, this is the area that's going to have the highest impact. We think this really is the killer app.
Whether they're called bitcoins, iridiums, or others, are clearly in the process of development at the moment. And they are supported by a technology which, in not only my view, the view of the IMF, but the view of many of the financial institutions at the moment, the distributed ledger technology will be used to actually drive, support transactions in a much safer, more efficient, and more anonymous way, which can have huge benefits, which can shorten speed and better guarantee the protection of those conducting those transactions. And that is the good side of it. There's another darker side of it, which clearly has been picked up by the Chinese authorities lately, which had to do with this Ponzi-like scheme, which was put in place on the occasion of this initial coins offering, which clearly have to be under control, regulated, scrutinized, and fraud be avoided by the supervisors and the regulators. But I would suggest that, you know, this is a moving moment, not a moving moment. It's the moving components to that whole debate between the distributed ledger technologies, the definition of monetary policies, the fate of an international currency like the special drawing rights, which I have floated and flagged about a week ago in London, which we are going to further explore. But I think we should be prepared for significant changes going forward. There were days when nobody believed in the banknotes, in the paper money, and where, you know, when countries moved to the assignat, in my country, it was just totally disregarded and considered as monkey money. That has massively changed in a matter of decades, I think.
Last point I want to make is that even though we're living in a very different world, and there are a lot more complexities created by the adoption of new technology, I do think it's really important that we treat the same risks, similar risks equally, whether they are created by the old system or in the digital environment. In other words, for bankers, for the regulators, the issues related to knowing your customer are going to be essentially the same, and I do think that kind of risks, whether this is with a digital service provider or a traditional banking service provider, those kind of risks actually needed to be treated equally and in a similar way. Let me stop it here.
To anticipate right now. There will always be a need for managing capital flows. The OECD, as you know, has the codes of liberalization of capital flows. It's a key multilateral instrument for managing a very broad array of capital flows across its currently 36 signatories. We've been through a process of reviewing the capital, the codes since 2016. Only last May, these revisions have been adopted formally by the participating countries with a number of improvements, with a view at the end of the day of making sure that the codes that had not been revised in over 20 years could better reflect the emerging needs of capital flow management, given all the transformations, all the changes that our economies are facing.
This lack of awareness is due mainly to the fact that it's taken years for enterprise-level, treasury-related blockchain applications to surface. Within the past year or so, a number of noteworthy use cases for blockchain have been introduced that provide significant enhancements to the business processes that Treasury is held responsible for. Throughout 2016 and 2017, one such application that has continued to gain momentum involves the use of blockchain to facilitate secure, efficient, and cost-effective cross-border transactions. As the blockchain industry begins to form, one company that has stood out amongst their peers as a major industry disruptor has been Ripple. Ripple offers a blockchain-based payment solution that can complete cross-border transactions in a matter of seconds, and offers cost reduction and time savings opportunities for banks and corporates alike. Ripple has also secured nearly $95 million in venture capital within the past 2 years, and now has over 100 banks and payment providers participating in their payments network. This includes major players such as UniCredit, Standard Chartered, and RBC. With such rapid growth, it appears as though Ripple is on the cusp of a major breakthrough in the payments arena, and has a solution that could significantly alter the methods by which organizations transfer funds. In order to learn more about Ripple and their payment-based blockchain network, I corresponded with 𝗕𝗕 𝗕, Ripple's VP of Product, to discuss the developments occurring along the blockchain front, and to get an idea of what Treasury can expect from the technology moving forward. This Q&A session provides insight into what Ripple actually is, how their blockchain payments platform works, what the advantages are, and most importantly, how Treasury can benefit from the technology to increase the speed, compliance, transparency, and security of cross-border transactions.
Digital currencies that central banks might issue. We also talked about regulating some of the biggest tech companies in the world. Take a listen.
It's actually happening. When you look at the Caribbean islands and the Caribbean central banks and the Bahamas, actually, you have, I believe, 4 or 5 islands which together have decided at central bank level to go with a digital currency. So central bank digital currency is coming alive. It's not going to happen today. I think they have a 12-month experimental period that they want to go through before they actually launch for good.
Imagine what this future might look like. So the computer stack we're used to is sort of the technology stack of our digital age is pretty simple, right? We have core infrastructure at the bottom, TCP/IP, the network protocols that make up our internet today. We have middleware above it, different APIs and libraries and tools we use to write on top. And then we have applications at the very top, things we're used to using, right? Uber, Dropbox, any of the email applications you might use. Blockchain is not that dissimilar. We have a similar stack. We have core infrastructure, different protocols that make up specific networks, whether it's the Bitcoin network, Ethereum, 𝗕𝗕, any of the others. We have middleware that's growing. right? Different tools that allow us to write on top of or communicate with a blockchain. And then at the very top, we have applications. But the application space for blockchain looks a little different. And so if you leave with nothing else about blockchain, I would encourage you to really think about this technology stack as a continuation of something we're actually pretty familiar with. We're going to have, many, many layers of growth happen at the same way we did for the modern internet era, when computers and humans started working together, right? We got an internet, we got PCs, we got hardware, we got all these things, and then we started getting applications. And that's what made our internet so useful. It's what made our economy change. Same thing is true for a decentralized era of trade. We're going to see our economy change, in part because we have many new tools.
First the price dropped, every rocket shaking right before the lift off. We're going to the moon, yeah, we're going to the moon. This time I prepared myself for Mars. All we had beyond enough to other stars. You were heading off to other stars, the guitar, ladies and gentlemen, from Mars.
Apollo 11 entered and gave us a magnificent ride. Roger 11, we'll pass that on, and it certainly looks like you're well on your way now.